Let's talk.
Giles Brown.
Indulging Kleptocracy. British service providers, post-communist elites, and the enabling of corruption is a fascinating book looking on how banks, lawyers, and lobbyists in the West keep post-communist kleptocrats, helping them stay rich. It is a new book that has been written by or compiled by, amongst others, Tena Prelec. And I'm delighted to say that Tena joins me live on the line now. Tena, good morning to you.
Hello, good morning, Giles. It's great to be here with you.
Whereabouts are you, by the way? Where are you speaking from?
Right now, I'm speaking from Trieste, which is a city in northeastern Italy, very much on the border. I'm very much a border child. I was born in Croatia, but in the northwest. So from a composite background, let's say post-Yugoslav/Italian.
Right. Okay. That's an interesting mezcla, as we would call it in Spain. We know that there are people living in the UK, oligarchs, kleptocrats, if you call them. And I mentioned the word kleptocracy because this was a term I first I'm familiar with when I spoke with Gavin Estler, who you heard at the beginning of the interview, and he'd written a book about kleptocracy and the way that people, mainly from the previous Soviet regime and under the opening up of Western markets, if you like, or the opening of democracy and capitalism, quote unquote, in the former Soviet Union, had made an awful lot of money and then fallen out of favor with Putin, or alternatively just got out of Moscow predominantly, and we're now living in the UK. We know about that. We know about Abramovich and all these sort of people. But your book is not just about that, but it's about the people who make this possible, because you don't just rock up with your super yacht, come up the Thames and park it next to HMS Belfast. So just explain what you're trying to achieve with this book.
Sure, Giles. So kleptocracy, to start from that term. So usually we perceive this term only in its political sense. It means rule by thieves, etymologically. And in our minds, and even in the minds of political scientists, to be honest, it usually equals to state capture. So a system where grand corruption is the norm, meaning that the public purse and the private are blurred, and there are tight-knit elites that make the rules and end up appropriating lots of the country's resources, right? And that all happens to the detriment of the public. But kleptocracy is not only located in one state. It is transnational. And this is where the enablers come from. So we make a point of saying, okay, the political definition, the political aspect is definitely there. But to make kleptocracy work, it needs to be global, right? It's not just something that happens in a far-flung country. And by the way, it doesn't happen only in Russia. There are other, developing countries where this system that I just mentioned happens. But also it's professional, meaning that it's facilitated, enabled by facilitators, gatekeepers, enablers in various financial centers of the world, including London. And these enablers are there's a wide variety of them, because you need a wide variety of service provision to make this whole mechanism work.
The interesting thing is, I mean, and I'm going to be talking about maybe particularly about London and the UK, but the UK has always prided itself on its fairness, on its decency, on its love and democracy, on the fact it doesn't, you can come to the UK and it's relatively, you can start again, after the Second World War, the immigration that we had, we were open to, Jewish refugees, German refugees from all over the place, our former colonies, etc. But that openness, and also the structures that we have, financial systems, legal systems, communication systems, and international, English is the lingua franca of the world. That's those things that make it a great business center, a great place to live, also are ideal for those enablers who who maybe don't ask where the money comes from or the moral standpoint. Because if you don't have a moral compass and you're only chasing the pound or the cryptocurrency transfer, then it is set up perfectly, if you like, for those who make it easier and I'm not just talking about the ones we know about, but there is, for every one that we see, there are thousands, hundreds of, or tens of thousands of billionaires who are living in the UK.
Indeed. So, Giles, what you described is basically a one-stop shop for this enabling of kleptocracy. And indeed, that's the case, because in order to enjoy the spoils of this, of corruption, yes, you do need to move your money, but you also need to move yourself and your family, so immigration services. Then you also need to establish your reputation as an upstanding citizen in the country where you move to. And you need to keep your reputation intact by silencing your critics, right? So these enablers that we talk about, of which also there is a great variety, and there are very many shades of gray here, in terms of its, enabling and facilitating. So all these mechanisms are indeed present in London as a wonderful, global capital that has, for various reasons, become a one-stop shop for many of these activities. One is, as you mentioned, also it's a post-colonial network. So basically, while the British Empire was dying, it was at the same time reinventing itself and using all those networks throughout the world to reinvent itself as this big financial center, right? And while this was happening, there was also the death of another empire of sorts, which was the Soviet Union, where some of these grand corruption mechanisms, as I mentioned, were very, very stark. And so this kind of connubium, this, joint moment in time of the death of these two empires and its reinvention basically functioned very, very well. Yeah. But as I said, while, kind of post-Soviet countries are a big empirical example in our book, this phenomenon truly is global. So we shouldn't just point the finger at one country or another.
Because we see we see things from Singapore and they're coming over as well. It's the Asian nations as well. It's not just a bunch of, those are the ones that are easy to characterize. Oh, for goodness sake, like I said before, it's Abramovich. It's what is it? Londongrad, it was being called, because of the high profile and because of the governments had made it very easy. If you think about Lebedev and, owning the owning the Evening Standard, and he became a lord, etc. And that's the above the radar, but perhaps a little below the radar are these coming in from new Asian countries.
Indeed, yes. What you mentioned, the various Singapores or Dubai, also a very prominent, or also countries such as Turkey or Iran are emerging also as bridging jurisdictions right now. So, for instance, there are many sanctions that have been in place after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, but there are ways in which these are overcome, and these jurisdictions are coming to the fore as, some loopholes are being strengthened and tightened in countries that were previously really, really key in this process, such as Switzerland, for instance, right? Other European countries, you have others emerging and so on and so forth. So this truly, as you say, is a global phenomenon. And another thing that we take care of pointing out is that it is also systemic. Because when some of these stories get into the media or into the British courts, it has happened, although very, very rarely. What we see emerging is stories about the so-called bad apples, right? Those enablers who are so corrupt themselves and so brazen that they are truly bad and truly, basically black in the way that they act. But what we see through our research and investigation, so we're a team basically of both academic researchers such as myself and also investigators, campaigners and journalists who work on this project for many years. So we see that it's not only about those bad apples whom we call upstream enablers, so those that take the kleptocrat up the stream and also launder its reputation. But then after this moment happens, we have a lot of big blue chip companies of large reputable law firms who are willing to take the work on board. And we call those enablers downstream. So it really, is this point about not discounting it as just a problem that is fringe, a problem that is niche, that only some people act upon it in society, because truly is in many ways systemic and embedded in our social and economic fabric.
Because when it comes to something like buying properties, for example, high level property, and, you only have to look at the way the London property market has gone, or property markets in other places as well. And a lot of these are being bought by companies, and a lot of these are being sent through places like Gibraltar, places like the British Virgin Islands, but, these offshore. So it's a sophisticated level, if you like, of divergence and things that were supposed to be put into place for securities, but are now being used to put a smoke screen about, so they don't have transparency about where the money is coming.
Yes, indeed. You mentioned two very interesting, I think, examples that touch upon Spain as well, right? Yeah. So physically in the Iberian Peninsula, we have Gibraltar, which used to be part of the British Empire. That was one of those places that used these offshore structures in such a way as to embolden itself economically, but by having these, consequences, dire consequences for worldwide, really, by allowing offshore structures to set place. So such places are also, BVI and Jersey and Guernsey and the Cayman Islands and so on and so forth. And you also mentioned the investment into real estate, which, if I'm not mistaken, in Spain is a problem in places such as Marbella, right?
Yeah.
But
I'm actually just looking at a picture of the Assad situation, because this was a big one, because again, it's a situation where this particular, has been a sunny place for shady people. But if you don't, exactly. But yeah. if the only thing you are worried about is the money, and that is the moral compass of your business or yourself, then this is the thing. It is pay cash. Don't ask where the money's from. Somebody else can deal with the moral consequences about this.
That is true. And, just sticking with the real estate part, that's a clear area in which money laundering happens, right, in various places of the world. But it is also only part of the story that we're telling. So the book is called Indulging Kleptocracy, sure, because we're talking about these enablers indulging the various elites or black kleptocrats, as you want to call them, but also because it's a reference to the Catholic indulgences of the Middle Ages, when you had a situation in which you had remittances of sins in exchange for money. So in other words, you give, money to the church or to the professional services in this day and age, and you might get your sins absoluted, right? You might for sins, yeah. So, and this is really a powerful metaphor that came from one of the interviews I was doing for this academic research, that applies to the area of reputation laundering. And reputation laundering, you can do it also in various ways. So you have, for instance, philanthropic donations. Yeah. So philanthropic donations, some have looked at it in the context of think tanks. They happen also to the royals, right? There are some elites who decide to donate money to the royals to really become part of the elite, to political parties. And we also looked at donations to universities as a prominent way of doing that. But it also happens, this reputation laundering, by silencing your critics. And in the UK, this was very prominent through the legal system. There was this phenomenon that many of your listeners will be familiar with of libel law, which used basically the very lenient libel laws in the UK for claimants to bring their claims there and basically sue people who didn't have anything to do with the UK. So, for instance, we have, let's say, a Ukrainian oligarch, Dmitry Firtash, who first donated to Cambridge University, and then he used that donation to say, look, I'm an upstanding citizen in the UK, and I will now sue the Kiev Post, so a Ukrainian paper, for what they wrote about me in Ukraine, right? So you see how all these various mechanisms, these various indulgences, as we call them, come together, to form basically this protection for kleptocrats.
And I suppose there's a thing, you can come to the UK, you can donate, you can reinvent yourself, but then you can weaponize that and go back and attack those who are, the free media, political opponents, business, people in business as well. That, and again, that is not what the system was originally designed for.
Yes, exactly. And some of these loopholes have been tightened. I have to say that also on the basis of research done not only by us, but also by great colleagues and campaigners, there are some legal provisions that are being discussed and are being implemented, right? Yeah. But it's also a slippery phenomenon because enablers are endlessly creative and they find other ways of going about that. So if libel law is no longer such big issue, then we have now SLAPP suits that are under the radar, right? So strategic lawsuits against public participation, meaning that people who are very rich can use their money to hire very powerful and very, very capable lawyers who will go after somebody, some journalists or people who write things against them, knowing that they are not able to defend themselves because they don't have that much money, then don't have, the means to defend themselves in court. So it's not used basically to establish that they are right. It's just used to stifle them and to tell them you need to stop. Yeah. Because then they end up resisting. So it's these kind of issues that we're up against, that these enablers are really very creative. And another key point of the book is that we make the point that they're not only responding to a demand that comes from abroad. They're not only supplying their services, they're also sometimes creating the demand themselves by helping, these, by marketing their services actively. So law office is saying, look, yes, we do help you buy your house, but we also help you get your golden visa or golden citizenship. Yeah. We help you get your kids into school. We speak those languages that you're familiar with, and so on and so forth, right? So there is this area of marketing and also sometimes of creating even laws, which we've seen, for instance, if I make an example, in the cases of these citizenship by investment and residency by investment programs that were created with the help of a global firm called Henley and Partners in many countries around the globe.
I was going to ask you, how do these people market? Because, last time I looked at the back of the Times columns with classified adverts, it wasn't, are you an oligarch? Do you want to get back at your enemies? Please contact this number. So presumably it's interesting. You said one-stop shop. So yeah, because you relocate. So you need a college, you need a good education for your children. You need a good lawyer anyway there, an accountant, somewhere to look after your offshore funds, your property funds. And by the way, if you need a little something, a little extra, a little spice on your salad, or on your roast beef, then perhaps we can help you that way. And presumably, because these, the super rich speak a different language to us. So they talk amongst themselves and they will say, I have this company and they helped me out and I recommend, it is the ultimate tell a friend marketing scheme, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, it's very, non-subtle dog whistle, to be honest, the way they market themselves. If you look at some big law firms, they will have dedicated pages for Russian speakers, for instance, and they will say, look, we have lawyers who speak your language. They are experts in buying real estate. They're experts in immigration law. They're experts in, let's say, also reputation management. It's actually an area of law.
Reputation management.
Yeah, it is. It is.
My goodness, I need that.
Yeah, exactly. So you can see that provides more or less this dog whistle that those at the receiving end will very, very easily be able to appreciate. I have to say, some of these web pages were taken down after, Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, which shows how, big international geopolitical events can have a bearing on such dynamics.
Yeah, because
but the problem here, the problem here, if I may, is that our policy is incredibly reactive at the level of the state, of the UK, but also of other Western countries, and also our international thinking. Because of course, there was a problem with this whole system of kleptocracy, transnational kleptocracy, emboldening Putin's elite. But we didn't find that out in February 2022. It was very well known beforehand. Many people had written about that, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is, came to the surface only then. And the issue with the geopoliticizing kleptocracy and securitizing it and saying it's a threat to our national security. Yes, of course it is. And it's good that, that finally it's a matter of discussion, but it shouldn't be linked only to the geopolitical fates of the day, the geopolitical trends, because otherwise you lose how systematic and global it is.
But that's one of the things is, and what this has proven, because obviously being based in Marbella, being based in the Costa del Sol, we saw a huge rush, Russian investment during the years leading up. And then the invasion of Ukraine happens. And then what happens is that the multi-millionaires, the kleptocracy, will move to a system or a government or a country en masse that they can still do their transfers, they can still buy their real estate. And that is why an awful lot of them went off to the Gulf states. Because at that point it was like, because we don't really, that is going to be our base from now on. Because and for a business, a place such as London or wherever, you can take the moral high ground and say we shouldn't be doing this. But at the end of the day, if those particular people move out of your city or your financial center, then your financial center will take a hit. And it is business against morality again, Tena.
Yes. So this is the good old guacamole argument. If we don't do it, somebody else will do it, right?
What's the guacamole argument? Sorry, I didn't expect us to go down the guacamole path, but please.
Well, is that the right definition? Guacamole, that game.
Oh, whack-a-mole. Yes, sorry, not guacamole. I thought you said guacamole, meaning that's my whack-a-mole. Yeah.
Yeah, my pronunciation can be a bit Croatian Italian sometimes.
That's fine. That's absolutely fine.
Yeah. So that's an argument that sometimes some government or generally legislators just say, but if we don't provide for those people, then this whole business will go somewhere else. But really, it's just such a rotten argument. I mean, if there wasn't enough proof of how corrosive this impact is of global and transnational kleptocracy, we've seen it so starkly, with the war in Ukraine. There are many other impacts that one can mention. I mean, I don't know, in Nigeria when COVID hit, the political elite couldn't get to their doctor anymore. And you know why? Because their doctors are not in Nigeria, of course, because they steal from the public coffers, but they know that they can't rely on the health systems there, right? And so their doctors are in London and in Paris and so on and so forth. So you see how, entire populations and entire, sectors are being deprived from this from this issue. So it really is an imperative to work on it on so many levels. So this argument is rotten. And then something else I wanted to mention, because you mentioned the Gulf states is definitely key nowadays in these dynamics. And again, it takes us back to the geopolitical point. So nowadays, the Gulf states and the United Arab Emirates, first of all here, and Dubai very prominently, are key in these dynamics, but they are our geopolitical friends in a very contested, very hot area of the world. And therefore, in many ways, they get a free pass, although the range there of kind of assisting kleptocracy is very wide. This is something that our colleagues, Joe DiVittorio and Matthew Page, have written on very, very, eloquently. So again, it's another proof that we need to look at the mechanisms. We need to crack down on this issue across the board. And not only thinking that it's something that it's being done by those countries and those people we don't like, who are our enemies today.
Yeah, you mentioned how the members of kleptocracy crack down against and put slaps on people who write bad about them, and yet you're putting this book out. I mean, how are we seeing this book, and why hasn't it had a slap on it then, or why haven't you had a banning order? You and your colleagues, Tena?
Oh well, who says we haven't?
Yeah.
So we did get our fair share of pressure back from the people we write about, and it's pretty, in a way, funny. You can find the fun part in it, because they use the very same mechanisms that we describe, right, to go after them. So after our report published with Chatham House in December 2021, that gained quite a lot of media attention, because it was also published in an important moment just before the revolution in Kazakhstan and the war in Ukraine. So it was used in Parliament kind of to bring evidence of who is corrupt and in which way and who enables those people. So we did receive a few, two prominent pushbacks, and actually at that point our publisher Chatham House left us in the cold and decided to side with these people and their British enablers. So our reports were pulped, and they edited that wording in the report, and we write about that in our book. And our publisher now, Oxford University Press, has been immensely more supportive so far. We also had, thanks to my former institution, the University of Oxford, we had legal help from a wonderful team of lawyers who have reviewed our book in its various drafts. And now, post-publication, after we asked everybody we mentioned to comment on what we wrote, and we actually integrated that in the book, we are taking those, those approaches as they come. But so far, it hasn't been too bad.
So far, so okay, good. I could talk to you about. I could talk to you about this, especially about the guacamole, until probably 1 o'clock. But I'm going to run out of time. The book is called Indulging Kleptocracy. It is by John Heatherstone, Tom Main, and Tena Prelec, who are speaking to today. You can order it via our own virtual bookstore. If people want to find you online and say nice things about you, Tena, where should they go to?
I'm afraid I'm on almost all the social media, so you can choose LinkedIn, Blue Sky. I would say I won't go on the third one. So okay. Let's keep it to LinkedIn and Blue Sky for now.
Very
Thank
good.
You, Giles.
Very good indeed. The book is called Indulging Kleptocracy. Tena, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you today.
Have a great day.